Every market and every city right here in San Diego is a little bit different as far as real estate goes. In this video, we're gonna get into 4 different areas and give you an update because on our other channel, Living in San Diego, we got a comment saying, hey, can we get a update on Fallbrook, San Marcos, Vista, Escondido? So we're gonna dive into those 4 neighborhoods and show you what's going on, some key things to keep an eye on as we go into these summer months right here in San Diego. So if you guys ever want a specific city, neighborhood, whatever breakdown, drop us some comments below because these are the videos we're making for you guys. And if you are thinking about buying or selling in any of these locations or throughout San Diego, feel free to reach out. We got a real estate crew right here in San Diego. All of our contact info is right below. And we'll hop on a Zoom call, get you dialed in so that when you are ready to make the move, you are all dialed in. So within each city, we're gonna jump into 4 different criteria, show you where the market is and potentially where it is going. First one is gonna be the Market Action Index. It's a good indicator of how's the market. As you go towards this 30 mark, you get into a buyer's market. As you go scale above that, it is in a seller's market. Now, in the past here in San Diego, this number's been way closer to 100 over the past few years. So you're gonna see here, you're gonna be able to compare different cities. And right now we're just looking at houses. Now, condos are always a different story too. Fallbrook obviously doesn't have too many condos, but we're gonna focus on houses today, just so you have a good picture. So starting off with the Market Action Index, you read right down here, the market has started cooling and prices have been flat for several weeks. Now in Fallbrook, prices have been flat for a lot longer than a few weeks. It's been most of the year where we haven't seen a ton of movement here in the price. And here's a chart so we compare where things were in the past to where they are now. Like I mentioned a few years ago, back in 2022, before we had huge interest rate spikes above that 8% range, the Market Action Index of May of 2022, so the same month back then, was way higher than it is right now. We saw that spike peak out. This chart goes up to 100, and we're doing a 90-day average. If you see these 2 down here, some are going to be 7-day averages for prices and inventory, but some are going to be 90, so you can see the trends. Now, we trended way high. We had a huge dip, and then here we've been more or less flat for the past year or so. Coming up a little bit as we went into this spring selling season, and still hotter if we compare it way back to 2019. I'm going to compare a lot of things to 2019 because that was a more normalized year. When we think of a typical market here in San Diego where it's not a crazy heavy seller's market, where we do have some homes for sale, some inventory, where we're not seeing prices jump dramatically. So 2019 is a good ballpark for that. Back then we were sitting just above 32. Now looking at prices, here's where I mentioned we've been flat for a while. So since August of 2023, we've seen kind of this sideways trend. Now it's kind of been a downward trajectory where prices have cooled off a little bit here, still right in that $1.2 million mark. Obviously it was a little bit higher up here as it was creeping towards that $1.3 million mark. But compared to May of last year, we're up about $100,000. But you can see that flat line here. Some of the other ones I'm gonna show you, some are going up and down, some are heading up, but this one is relatively flat. Now, one thing that will either make prices go up or down is the number of homes for sale. So the inventory. Now, when we sit back into 2019, May of 2019, there were 280 homes on the market. Over these past few years, we've seen it drop and then kind of trend sideways here in Fallbrook. Now we're seeing a little bit of a jump up. So we're above last year. Right now we have 88 homes on the market as compared to last year where we had 68. So a nice jump in inventory, definitely not at the point where we were in 2019. So we still have a lot of work to go. And one thing that has potentially helped inventory rise a little bit here throughout a lot of San Diego actually is the interest rates, because in the past few years when interest rates were 3, 4, even 5%, there was a lot more buyer demand out there because there was a lot more purchasing power. But as elevated interest rates have hit into that 7% range that we are right now, the buyer demand is shrunk a little bit, especially in certain price points in certain areas. And the last metric we'll keep an eye on is properties with a price decrease. Now this will give you an indication of homes that are on the market that have had to reduce their price. Obviously, the higher this number goes, it's an indicator that homes aren't selling as quickly or at the prices they initially came on. So sellers out there, if you're a seller, potentially having to lower the price a little bit to get interested buyers in there. And the trend here from last year, we were sitting at 32%, 32.45. This year, we're sitting at 28.37. So out of the homes on the market right now, there's been less price decreases than last year. So it's saying there's still buyer demand out there, but we are starting to see an uptrend in this as well. Now hopping into Vista, you can see we're in a bigger seller's market here in Vista. Now, last month it was a little bit higher. So this bottom line here is last month. this is today. So we've seen a little bit of a tick down. Now, typically in Fallbrook compared to Vista, yes, it's going to be a little bit more of a buyer's market. There's just a little bit less demand out there. But as we go down to a market action index and compare it to last year, we're sitting at 70 or just shy of 70. Now you can see when it peaked out, this number, like I said, goes up to 100. Back in 2022, we were touching the 90s and a little bit above the mid 90s. And all these charts, you're going to see this big drop off at the end of 2022 because, like I said, that's when interest rates shot up quite quickly. Now we are seeing it sit right here. It did bounce a little bit off of where it was trending down above 70. Now we're sitting about 72, but still a pretty consistent seller's market here in Vista. And while Fallbrook on the price median list price, it was pretty flat along here. You can see some valleys and some peaks here. Now we're on an upward trend. Now typically you'll see that as we go from January, February, March, going into the seller season. Median price points here in San Diego will typically go up a little bit as there's more homes coming on the market. That's just buyer season, so prices are up a little bit, but we have started to trend down a little bit. So we did peak about $1.1 million. Now we're sitting about $1 million. Now for inventory, the number of homes out there, we are seeing a good jump up here compared to last year. Last year we're sitting at 36. We are sitting at double that right now at 72, which doesn't seem like a ton, but it is a ton compared to last year. And we're sitting above where we were in May of 2022, May of 2021. But you can see a typical year, let's go back to May here, it's about 172. So we're not skewed as differently as in Fallbrook, but still there's going to be more demand for Vista homes, Shadow Ridge, the foothills. It really depends on where you are. But the good news is there are more homes available. But are we seeing as many price decreases? So the dotted line does jump quite a bit, but I just want to keep them both up here because you can see back in April, trending till now on the dotted line, which is the 7-day average, you can see it has spiked significantly, while that trend in the 90-day still has not. So I'd assume that this in the following days will start to go up, but we're sitting about just shy of 39% of homes have had a price reduction. So significantly more than typically like a third of homes will have a price reduction. So we are trending up in there. And some of these, if you look back towards when it was kind of a crazy market, got down to 13%. On the 7-day average, got down to 8%. So very few homes were having price reductions. Now we're seeing that tick up a little bit. Now hopping into Escondido, the market appears to have begun to cool as we're still notably in a seller's zone. Now, buyer's zone over here, we haven't seen that in quite a few years. So don't expect us to go from a heavy seller's market to a buyer's market where the buyers have the upper hand. We have seen little stints of that where maybe there's not as much competition. So on homes that are getting offers, you're looking at 2, 3, 4 offers, but you're not looking at 5, 10, 15 offers on a home. And the market action index is actually trending down a little bit. So just shy of 65. The lower this number falls gives you a good idea. Are we heading towards a buyer's market or a seller's market? Obviously in the peaks here, as we were heading towards 100, you guys know that time, that's the same always. And then this is the big drop we saw in 2022. But we are seeing a little bit of breathing room for buyers out there. Good news for sellers, homes are still selling relatively quickly. Obviously, it's going to go house to house, neighborhood to neighborhood. How's the condition of the house? Where's the location? All that kind of stuff. But most markets, like I said, here in San Diego are still in a seller's market. Now, at the end of last week, it was at $1.2 million. Once again, this is the 90-day average. Give us a little bit better trend line. But we peaked out in September over here, maybe October of 2023. And we saw a dip coming into the end of the year, and we see our typical home price appreciation or our home price growth going into the selling season. And prices continue to demonstrate a nice trend up over the last several weeks. But has inventory followed? Do we still see more inventory or less inventory? This number is actually going up quite nicely, sitting at 128. Let's compare it to where we were in 2019 in May. We were at 319. So less than half of where we were then, but it's trending up nicely. Compared to last year, we're sitting at 72 homes. Now we're sitting at 128 homes. So the higher this number goes, the better it is for buyers out there, because obviously you're gonna have more choices, but there's gonna be more competition out there. So the more homes on the market, the less buyers, prices tend to moderate a little bit. Now, this trend will hopefully continue going into these next few months. Usually here in San Diego, we see inventory growth going into like May, June, or July. So depending on what year it is. So we still potentially have a few months left to see this grow. And properties with a price decrease, we're sitting lower than a few of the other ones, sitting at 27.5%. We peaked out up here in December over 50% of homes had price decreases. But compared to last year, where we're sitting at 26% of homes had a price decrease, now we're sitting just about where we were then. Now we're cruising into San Marcos. So the market has started cooling and prices have recently plateaued. You can see we're sitting right at 60, a little bit less than we were last month. As far as, are we in a seller's market? Are we in a buyer's market? We saw a slight tick down right here. And San Marcos over these past few years has been one of the hotter markets, specifically certain areas, southern San Marcos, Discovery Hills, San Alejo Hills, those kind of areas. Northern San Marcos still saw a lot of price growth, a lot of price gain. It just wasn't nearly as aggressive as Southern San Marcos. But you can see the market action index sitting at 60.10 compared to last year. So it's down a little bit compared to last year, which we have seen homes sitting a little longer in these areas and more homes coming on the market. Compare it to where we were in 2019. A normalized market, we're sitting right about 50. So we're trending in that direction. And here's the bump in inventory that I mentioned. 65 homes in San Marcos. You're going to go compare it to 32 homes of last year. So this has been growing, which is nice. Seeing a little bit of pressure be released as buyer demand has dropped a little bit. Homes are able to build up a little bit. And this is with interest rates in that 7% range. Once they drop into the six with a 6 handle on it, any sixes really, even when it got down to 6.99 at the end of last week. I think some home buyers who have been sitting on the sidelines, maybe waiting for interest rates to drop, will hop back in the market. Now let's compare it to where we were in 2019. You can see in May of 2019, 172 homes on the market. So well below half of where we have been in a normalized market. And I skipped past the median home price here in San Marcos. It was 1.4. And you see a consistent, more or less consistent trend upwards over these past few years. We've had a few dips, obviously, here and there, but the overall trend has been up. Now, this seems to have flattened out a little bit, where last year back to the competition, as you get more competition, as you get more buyers out there, and let's say a private home was listed for $1.3 million. Well, it could definitely have sold for $1.4 million because there was a lot of competition. It was driving those prices up aggressively. Now, this year, we're seeing homes sit a little bit longer. Prices are, let's say, getting about 99 to 100% of list price. So not like 106, 107% of list price that we did see last year, which is good for buyers. But sellers, still a lot of demand out there. It just comes down to pricing your home appropriately. And the homes with a price decrease is sitting just under 28%. Where we were last year was sitting at just shy of 32%. Now, when we peaked out in January of 2023, we're sitting above 50%. As this comes down, it just depends on how far it will go down, or are we gonna trend up over these coming months? And as always, every neighborhood's gonna be different. Every house is gonna be different. I say that a lot, but it is true. You can watch all this stuff. These are broad trends, which are good to keep an eye on. But if you want some specific information for your specific home, whether you are looking to sell your home or specific information on buying a home in different neighborhoods, feel free to reach out. All of our contact info is right below. I'm Chris Erickson. We got a real estate crew right here in San Diego, and we got your back when making the move here in San Diego.